where in nature do you see bare soil? I like to say.
Desert.
How well is nature doing in the desert? Right? If you are engaging in agriculture or growing plants in a manner where soil can be seen, as far as I'm concerned, you're violating nature. Like, nature does not do bare soil. She doesn't do it. Right? Only when she's, a crone and just like withering away and dying, only then do you see bare soil. You don't see bare soil in nature. It's so a management practice that involves bare soil, I think, is something you should be attempting to work yourself away from. Certainly, I grow a lot of salad greens, and I broadcast my seeds on the bed, so I have to have bare soil to plant my seeds in. But I like to be able to see my soil maybe as much as 2 weeks of the year. If I can, have it be as little as 2 weeks in the year and have 50 weeks of the year not being able to see the soil, I think that's at least an improvement. So the question is, what are the things we're doing that are really destructive, and how do we begin to work ourselves away from them? Yes?
So if you're not tilling, how are you getting bare soil to plant?
I am tilling
your greens?
when I do that, and I do a really, really shallow till.
Okay.
I try to do an inch or inch and a half tilting. Not a deep 4 or 6 inch,
full turn.
Turn.
Yeah.
I want to, if possible, I want to keep that fungal community from being shredded and destroyed. And so I can prepare a seedbed by lightly tilling the surface, or even you can do it with a rake, pretty much. So it's a combination of, for me, cover crops and mulching. I think where in nature do you see monocultures is one of my next questions.
Farms.
But not nature. Monocultures, as far as I'm concerned, are also not the way nature does it. And so that's something else to be concerned with or to be sensitive to. Usually nature does polycultures, which is one of the insights of the permaculture community. When you're growing plants like kale or tomatoes or winter squash, anything that's got any kind of a decent size to it, there's no reason why you can't have other plants growing, below it. Clovers and things like that are really easy to have undersown. The more species you have present in the ecosystem, the more species of soil life you have, as I understand it, right? If you think about what are the flora in your gut, and what's the flora in a chicken's gut, and what's the flora in a cow's gut, if you added them all up together, you'd have a broad spectrum of species, right? As opposed to just one, human gut flora or rabbit gut flora or goat gut flora. So if you are, open to the concept that a broad spectrum of microbiology in the soil is a beneficial thing, the more species of plants you have, the more families of plants you have growing above ground, then therefore the broader the spectrum of species growing below ground. Does that make sense? In some cases, perhaps you're not able to do a polyculture during the growing season. Then I would say the off-season, the fall, winter, and spring period of time is your chance to have a polyculture. So cover crops is a topic people are familiar with, I'm sure. Rye and oats and vetch and forage radishes people have heard about. And I would suggest that there's no reason why you can't begin to undersow cover crops by end of August in many cases. You can take your oats and your vetch or maybe oats and field peas and forage radishes, and you can broadcast those seeds under your broccoli and your tomatoes and eggplants. Anything with any kind of size, say you're growing annuals, you can broadcast those seeds in the sort of the end of the growing season, second half of the growing season, get them established, and by the time the frost comes and kills your tomatoes, because hopefully it's the frost that kills your tomatoes, not disease, those cover crops will be well established. They can be 6 or 12 or 18 inches tall, and you can have a continuous cycle of green plants growing through the year. If you got winter-killing cover crops like oats and field peas, then you'll have a nice layer of mulch on the ground in the spring that you can plant into. I generally, when I'm planting my crops, like whether it's tomatoes or chard or anything that's being transplanted in, I'll transplant those crops in and put my drip tape down and then mulch. And I use hay mulch, but You can certainly use straw or leaves. If you've got seaweed, that's awesome. But I like to keep my soil covered. I like to not be able to see my soil as much as possible. And the way I do that is through putting down mulch after I'm transplanting crops. You can certainly do things like white clover as well if you'd like. But mulch works really, really well. It's also a really good way to feed soil life through the growing season, keep the soil covered, minimize water evaporation, etc. So those are some basic ways to maintain air in the soil, is to minimize tillage, to keep the soil covered, to create an environment where the earthworms are going to flourish. My experience is if you've got a nice layer of dead plant matter on the soil, leaves or straw or hay, that's the kind of environment where earthworms will flourish. And where earthworms are going to flourish, your need for tillage is dramatically reduced.